Hello, and welcome back to Chords and Queens, the podcast dedicated to celebrating and amplifying the extraordinary work of female composers and musicians. I'm your host, Jennifer Athen, and I created this show because these remarkable artists and their groundbreaking works deserve to be heard, studied, and celebrated. On today's episode, we're looking into the life and music of Lili Boulanger. Like all good stories, let's start at the beginning. Lili was actually born Marie Juliette Boulanger in Paris in 1893, but she is known professionally and better as Lili Boulanger. This is apparently because her older sister Nadia found it a bit difficult to pronounce the full name Marie Juliette, so resorted to her sibling being called Lili instead. Obviously it stuck because professionally she's definitely known as Lili Boulanger. Now, Nadia, you might be thinking, hang on, Nadia Boulanger? That sounds familiar. Well, Lili wasn't the only legendary one in her family. Her sister Nadia is actually highly regarded as one of the best music teachers to date and taught many famous composers. But spoiler alert, I will be covering Nadia's life next week, so I don't want to mention too much about her life, as I don't want to spoil that episode for you all. It also wasn't just the two sisters that were musically talented in the Boulanger family. Mum and Dad were also pretty musical, to put it lightly. Her mother, Raisa Meshetsky, which I hope I'm saying that right, and whose side note is a Russian princess, which that story in itself feels a bit Princess Diaries to me. Like when I'm picturing Raisa, I'm picturing Anne Hathaway. But moving on. So anyway, Mummy Boulanger gets married to her vocal teacher at the Paris Conservatoire that, get this, is 41 years older than her. I will let that sink in. His name is Ernest Boulanger, and they get married in 1877 and move to Paris, where I'm assuming they just look at each other and are like, you're a singing princess, I'm a Prix de Rome winning composer, we should procreate and make ridiculously talented musical children. Okay, maybe it didn't go exactly like that, but I digress. I would also like to mention that Ernest was 77 years old when Lili was born, so I'll just leave that fact there for you all to digest as well. And it looks like from the moment she could walk, Lili was probably surrounded by a lot of music. By age 2, she was already showing an extraordinary ear for music that astonished even her musically sophisticated family. But Lili's childhood was marked by both privilege and struggle. She was born with a condition that at the time was referred to as intestinal tuberculosis, but looking at it with 21st century eyes, and maybe a bit of medical knowledge, not me of course, Google, it was perhaps likely that it was Crohn's disease or some other intestinal disorder. This condition, though, would follow her throughout her life, often confining her to bed for weeks at a time. Yet, rather than limiting her musical development, these periods of physical confinement seemed to intensify her inner musical world. It's also worth mentioning that at the time, this illness was incurable, and if you think about healthcare at that time as well, it's definitely going to pale in comparison to today's medical advancements. Today we know so much more about Crohn's and how to live with it, so it's such a shame diving into Lili's story, knowing that if she were alive today, perhaps she would have been given the care that she needed and not had to endure it in the same way. And I mean, anyone that has a chronic illness themselves or knows someone with a chronic illness knows how debilitating and life-altering it can be. And it's one of the reasons I regard her so highly, is because despite her health, she still pursued her passion and made the most magnificent of music. When she was just a child, it is said she would often accompany Nadia to classes at the Paris Conservatoire, and she learned violin, piano, and harp, and made her public debut in 1901 when she was just 8 years old. She played Godard's Berceuse and Gounod's Prière on the violin during a musical mass at Notre-Dame de Bon Secours in Trouville. Again, we're not going to judge my French. She seemed to be a natural and managed to grasp musical and theoretical concepts incredibly quickly. It was around this time she also began taking organ lessons with Louis Vierne. It's believed though that she formally began classes at the conservatoire at around the age of 16 in 1909. And just to give a little bit of further context, this was an institution steeped in tradition, to put it lightly, where women were often not taken seriously in the world of music composition. Yet Lili's talent for music was so undeniable that she quickly became the pupil of Gabriel Fauré, one of France's most respected composers and teachers. What perhaps made Lili's music so distinctive was her ability to blend the French impressionist techniques she was learning with something more personal and emotionally direct. While her contemporaries were often creating little delicate atmospheric pieces, Lili's music often to me is just more of an urgency to it. Her health continued to be precarious throughout her conservatoire years. There were periods when she couldn't attend classes for months, yet she never fell behind. If anything, I wonder if her forced isolation seemed to deepen her emotional compositional voice. It's assumed that her compositional life began quite early, right? Because of course she's playing violin, piano, organ. She must be making music as well and writing it down. But her oldest surviving works are really from when she was 17 years old and onwards. Which brings us to the piece that I would like to focus on today. And that piece is the Prelude in D flat major, which is around about this time that we're talking about. A piano piece that is just so calmly whimsical and innocent, and it uses a great range of the instrument and blends these really luscious chords with some quiet dissonance, is what I'm going to say. For me, it brings up themes like escapism, and the drones and the bass mixed with the sort of descending right hand make me think of sort of Alice falling down the rabbit hole. But hey, that's just me. Let's have a listen to it together and see if you agree. If not, feel free to leave your opinion in the comments, as I love hearing other people's take and interpretations on a piece of music. So this is Prelude in D flat major, written in 1911. Ugh, gorgeous, gorgeous. Love it. Gorgeous. Thus takes us to the Prix de Rome, France's most coveted prize for young composers. It's almost like today's version of the Grammys, kind of. Give me a bit of leeway on that. It was a really prestigious and respected prize to win, and it was sort of assumed that if you win it, you'll have this incredible and successful career. For example, some previous winners include Claude Debussy and Berlioz. So in 1912, Lili enters the competition for the first time, but unfortunately, due to her chronic illness and health, she had to withdraw that year. It unfortunately came with some awful comments like she couldn't handle the stress of the competition, and I'm sure just reaffirmed that ridiculous belief that women weren't cut out to be composers, and oh, it's way too stressful for them, and oh, can't handle the pressure, la 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 la, all that garbage. But have no fear, those people are quickly proven wrong. Because in 1913, at just 19 years old, Lili Boulanger made history. She became the first woman ever to win the prestigious Prix de Rome. Also, I have to add in this little fact because I myself, like Nadia Boulanger, I'm an older sister. And I mention this because Nadia submitted work to the Prix de Rome 3 times before Lili, but never won it. And her younger sister comes along and wins it, essentially first time round. I bet it was awkward around the dinner table that night, but I'm assuming Nadia is probably a better sister in person than me, so maybe she was just happy for her little baby sister. Lili's winning piece was her cantata, Faust et Hélène, a work that demonstrated not just technical mastery but emotional maturity far beyond her years. She unanimously won the competition with a whopping 34 out of 36 votes in favour of her composition. It even had composer Claude Debussy say, "Lili Boulanger is only 19 years old. Her experience of the techniques of writing music are far greater." That's some high praise. I also read this quote from the press that's actually quite funny, that apparently said, "The suffragettes smash windows and burn houses, but a maiden of France has gained a better victory." I just thought it was quite funny. Because indeed, she was victorious. As a result of winning the Prix de Rome, she was given a publishing contract by Ricordi Publishing House, but Faust et Hélène was the only work she ever had published during her lifetime, which is crazy. Like, actually saying how talented she was, they never published more of her work in her lifetime. That was the only thing she got to witness being published. To me, that's so sad. And also, fun fact, and this makes me so emotional as well, because the dedication for the composition that they published was to her sister. I just love these two so much. I mean, if you have sisters, you can definitely take that one or two ways as well. The first being I'm going to dedicate this to my sister so that she's reminded forever that I won the competition. But again, she's a better person than me, so I'm sure it was out of pure love and kindness and respect for her older sister that basically she paved the way for Lili to flourish in music, and I'm sure taught her so much about composition. And obviously she was a great teacher. Of course, potentially her first student was her little sister. As part of winning the Prix de Rome prize, Lili got to go to, you guessed it, Rome. Cut to the Lizzie McGuire movie, and if you understand what I'm talking about, let's be friends. When I think of Lili Boulanger in Rome, I'm thinking Lizzie McGuire in Rome. Make that make sense. I don't know. She got to stay at the Villa Medici, but if you're thinking her time there was just spent eating pizzas and ice cream and composing to her heart's content and she was the happiest girl in the world, you're sadly wrong. She had a bit of difficulty with the program director, Albert Besnard. I think probably some internalized misogyny from his end, mixed with a real lack of empathy for the state of Lili's health, saw the director being quite cruel to her, refusing her a female attendant and instead sort of offering her a male one. And obviously Lili's health is not great, so you want someone that you can trust and be there for you. You don't want a strange man, especially because she's a teenager as well, right, in this. Why would you want a strange dude looking after you when you could just ask for a woman? I don't know. Makes sense to me. And for a teenage girl in a strange country and residence, as well as navigating her ongoing health issues, I'm sure this caused Lili a great deal of stress and upset and probably put a damper on the whole of this experience. Now, in 1914, she writes the Trois Mots for the piano. The one we're going to be listening to is the cortège. For a bit of background, a cortège is a funeral procession, and Boulanger's setting immediately establishes this solemn, ritualistic character. The piece opens with a stark rhythmic pattern in the bass, a steady, measured tread that evokes footsteps in a formal procession. Above this sort of funeral march rhythm, Lili weaves a melody that's both mournful and noble. She uses a minor key but incorporates these major chord relationships that prevent the music from becoming too dark or hopeless. Instead, there's a sense of dignified acceptance of grief processed through ceremony and community. What's really sophisticated about this piece is how Lili varies the basic cortege rhythm throughout. Sometimes the march becomes more urgent, the rhythm more complex, other times it almost stops entirely, as if the procession has paused for reflection. These rhythmic variations create a sense of this psychological realism, and it's not just a generic funeral march, but a portrayal of how grief actually feels when it stops and starts. It's moments of overwhelming emotion and composure. I think this piece really reflects Lili's growing confidence as a composer and her willingness to take such emotional risk in her music, I think. This is just the solo piano version that I could obtain, but I do recommend listening to the violin and piano one as well. So let's play. Oh, it's just so jubilant. Around this time, the First World War was just starting and it changed everything for Lili. She wanted to do what she could to help, and from there established a support network for musicians that had been deployed. She actually managed to arrange deliveries of food and clothes and even some money to be sent to soldiers. Along with her sister Nadia, she organised concerts to raise money for war orphans, as well as part of a group of students of the conservatoire that created a gazette of compositions to give to students that had been enlisted into the war. The war also inspired some of her most powerful compositions. Her psalm settings from this period, particularly Psalm 130, show a composer grappling with questions of faith, mortality, and human suffering on a mass scale. For me, the pieces also get super dark, and obviously your work's going to be inspired by the horrific things that you're seeing in the world. The Psalm 130 is actually one of my favourite works by Lili, as it's so dark and melancholic and has this great ending, which I'm about to play for you. And it has such depth to it as well. So let's listen to the end. I'm going to put "end" in quotation marks. It's near the end. It's what I'd call the climax of the piece, but it's truly just phenomenal. It gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. So let's play it. incredible. Now, these pieces around this time marked a significant evolution in her style. Where her earlier works were often intimate and personal, these psalm settings were grand, orchestral statements that showed she could work effectively on the largest musical canvases. Even her harmonic language became more daring during this period, incorporating quartal and quintal harmonies that were at the cutting edge of contemporary compositional practice. Yet, she never abandoned melody or emotional directness. Even her most modern passages serve expressive purposes rather than existing for their own sake. By 1917, Lili's health was failing rapidly. The chronic pain that she had endured since childhood was worsening, and periods of illness were becoming longer and more severe. Yet she continued, composing with remarkable determination. Her final major work was the choral piece Piesu, which was completed in 1918 with the help of her sister Nadia, who dictated the piece as Lili was in pain just months before her death. It's a work of extraordinary beauty and spiritual depth, showing that even as her physical strength was ebbing, her musical imagination remained vivid and just powerful. Lili Boulanger sadly died on March 15th, 1918, at just 24 years old. She had been a professional composer for barely 5 years. Yet in that brief time, she had created a body of work that established her as one of the most significant voices of her generation. What makes Lili's legacy particularly poignant is not just what she accomplished, but what she might have achieved had she lived longer. Her musical development shows a composer who was constantly growing, constantly pushing herself to say more with her music. The arc from her early, relatively simple pieces to her complex, more emotionally powerful works of her final years suggests that she was on the verge of perhaps even greater achievement. For decades after her death, Lili's music was overshadowed by her sister Nadia's reputation as a teacher. Nadia, who lived until 1979, taught virtually every major American composer of the mid-20th century. But she always insisted that Lili was the greater talent, the true genius of the family. Just give me a second while I cry my eyes out about that. Our pieces that we feature today, like the Prelude in D-flat and the Cortege, have become staples of the piano repertoire. They're pieces that work equally well in intimate recital settings and as recorded music for home listening. They demonstrate that music doesn't need to be aggressive or overtly dramatic to be powerful. Sometimes the most profound statements are made quietly. Contemporary composers and musicologists have also recognized Lili's historical significance as a pioneer. She proved that women could compete at the highest levels of compositional achievement, paving the way for future generations of female composers. Her Prix de Rome victory wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a crack in the institutional barriers that had long kept women on the margins of musical composition. As we conclude our exploration of Lili Boulanger's life and music, it's worth reflecting on what her story tells us about artistic achievement and the human potential. Here was someone who was faced with significant limitations with her health, yet managed to create music that continues to move and inspire listeners more than a century after her death. The pieces we looked at today represent just a small fraction of her output, yet they demonstrate the essential qualities that make her music: emotional honesty, technical sophistication, and a distinctive compositional voice that was entirely her own. Her legacy reminds us that artistic greatness isn't always about longevity or massive output. Sometimes the most profound artistic statements come from those who have something unique to express within their works. And with that, we bid adieu to Lili. That's all for today, and as always, any music we've used in the podcast will be linked in the description below. And if you like this and want more quick little musical facts as well, make sure to give us a follow over on the gram and the TikTok, where I post lots of little stories about female composers. You can find that at Chords and Queens. And until then, I will see you next time.